The autofill feature is a quick feature when it comes to copying the contents of a cell or a range of cells in a quick vertical or horizontal format. For example, if I come up here and click in the cell, if I hover over in the lower right hand corner, see that little black dot? When I hover over it, I get a black cross. We discussed this in earlier training videos that you get basically 3 variations of your pointer or your mouse. When you hover in a blank area, you get the white cross. That means you could click and drag and select a range. If you hover over a selection, the border of the selection, you either get the 4-way arrow, which means you can click and drag and move that range, either to the right or to the left, up or down, or with that selection still there, if you hover over the lower right-hand corner, you get the black cross, which is what we're covering now, the AutoFill handle. So if I come up here, click in the cell, hover over the lower right-hand corner, I get the black cross, and it's called the AutoFill handle, or it's referred to that because it's like a handle that when you click and you drag down, it actually copies the contents of that cell all the way down, as far out as you want to go. Let me go ahead and hit undo. Of course, I can go ahead and click and drag the AutoFill handle to the right, to the left, or even up above and let go. What's interesting is that if I have a range selected and I want to go ahead and copy that range, you can see I've got range, well, it begins in cell H2 through H5. If I hover over the AutoFill handle for that selected range and click and drag over to the right, copies the whole range over to the right. Okay, let me go ahead and hit undo a couple of times. Now the AutoFill handle is more than just a quick way of copying contents of a cell to adjacent cells, either above, below, or to the left or right. It works even on formulas. For example, as you recall in an earlier training video, when I select the cell, if you look up here in the formula bar, we typed in a simple formula. We're adding up the cells C7 through C10, and there's the range right there. In fact, I can double click and it selects it, right? Hit the escape key to get back out of it. But let me come over here and select this range and hit the delete key, and let's pretend that we haven't calculated for these 3 months their totals for each employee's here, or their ID that we have listed. Instead of going ahead and typing in each cell, I can quickly autofill or copy the contents of this cell. Now what are the contents of the cell? Is it the value or is it the formula? It's actually the formula. The value here is the result of the contents of the cell, which is the formula. So if I come down here, hover over the lower right hand corner, and I click and drag over once, it copies the formula. But not only does it copy the formula, it updates it or shifts it so it includes, instead of column C, it sees now that it's in column D, so it updates the formula accordingly. For example, back in the January total formula, you can see that I've got rows 7 through 10. Rows 7 through 10. But it's in the single column here, C. So I've got C7, C8, C9, C10. When I copy over the formula over here, it keeps the same rows, 7 through 10, but it updates or adjusts accordingly because it's in the new column when we finish autofilling over to that column. So instead of being the C column, it's now in the D column. If it wasn't, and it still remained the C column, well, then we get the same value here, or the result, because it would still be adding up this range here. So thank goodness that AutoFill compensates and adjusts for those shifts from left to right, as far as us copying the formula from left to right here. In fact, I can go ahead and select this, click and drag the AutoFill, and finish copying those formulas into these 2 cells here. Now it also works if you have formulas that are going from top to bottom here. In fact, click in this cell here, you can see I'm using the sum function, which if I double click here, you can see it's summing up this range that you see selected, C7 through F7. Let me hit the escape key on the keyboard. So same thing, if I go ahead and I select this range and hit the delete key, and then I have to re-enter in those functions instead of going into each cell and typing it in. If I have it in one cell and it's adjacent to the others, and the pattern is in the same range, you know, going from column C to column F, and then in the next row, column C to column F, but just updating by row, then I can go ahead and use the AutoFill handle. Click and drag, and you're done. And let's test it. Let's go ahead and click in that cell. Did it actually move from row 7 to row 8? Well, up in the formula bar, yes it did. It's no longer 7, it's now 8. So that's nice that it updates for us to include the next employee ID in their cells from January through April. And the reason why is because when we autofill down, Excel knew that we were in a new row, and so it tries to keep things logical, and it says, okay, since you're in a new row here, I'll go ahead and update the references to the new row. As opposed to the new column, it still keeps the same columns. We're still looking from column C through F. We're just updating it by dragging down the autofill handle by row. In fact, here's a shortcut. Let me go ahead and select the range, hit the delete key. If you're going from top to bottom here, Instead of clicking and dragging down, especially if you have like 1,000 employees, just go ahead and hover over the lower right hand corner. Like I said, instead of clicking and dragging, you can quickly double click. Boom, automatically does the autofill for you, so you don't have to click and drag and go down to rows as many as employees that you have. That's a faster way. It only works vertically, by the way. It doesn't work horizontally. A few more things about the autofill feature. One is that, like I just showed you, you can go ahead and copy the contents of a cell or the formula within the cell. You can also actually set off patterns. For example, if I come down here and type in 1, hit enter, and then I go ahead and type in 3, I've got a pattern here that when I go from 1 to 3, it's by 2. So if I click and drag and select both cells, and I click the autofill handle of the selection of both cells, and I go down, and I keep going down, you'll notice that every cell that I go down, it updates, it adds the next cell by a factor of 2. When I let go, you can see it goes from 1 to 3, 5 to 7, 7 to 9. Again, it's picked up the pattern beginning with the first selection, and it's by 2. In fact, let me go ahead and hit undo. If I select the cell that contains 3, and I come up here on the Home tab to the Numbers group, click on the drop-down arrow and say that that cell has a different format. It's not a general number, it's now in currency, and I go ahead and select the same range, and I drag the autofill handle for that range, and let go. Notice that it keeps the same pattern. In that, it's still moving from one cell to the next by a factor of 2, or adding 2. I mean 1 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 7, but we've got the first cell here that's a general number, and it keeps that same pattern, and the second cell is by currency, and it keeps the same pattern as well. And go ahead and hit undo a couple of times here. And then a few more examples. If I come up here and I type in Q1 and hit enter, and I drag the autofill handle of Q1, Excel already has built into the program that the next one would be Q2. Well, what's that? Quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. Go down again, back to quarter 1. It also has built into the programming that if I come up here and I select January and I click and drag to the right, you'll see it goes to February, March, April, which I already have. But I can continue on to May, June, July, and, well, go all the way out here. In fact, if I go out far enough, you can see that it goes, well, from October to November to December and then back to January, and it continues to repeat the cycle, and I let go. So you can go on and on forever without having to type in the months. It'll pick up the pattern for you wherever you left off. So if it's August and I want to go down this time, click and drag the autofill handle for August, and it'll go next to September and then circle back again and continue on. Certainly a quicker way of entering in your months without having to type it in for each cell here. You can also do it by abbreviation. So if I type in Jan, hit enter, click in that cell and drag the autofill, it abbreviates the months as well. And then finally, when you're finished autofilling, you get this little tag at the end. If you click on the drop-down arrow, you get some options. By default, it fills in the series of cells. You can just say, look, I just want to copy the cells. I don't want to go ahead and fill in the series. In other words, I started with January. The series goes sequentially to February, March, April. If I just go ahead and select copy, it copies January into all those cells. I can click on the drop-down arrow. I can go ahead and say, don't copy the cell, just the formatting. Just go ahead and fill in the formatting. So if the formatting of this first cell here was bold, had the color red, italicized, it would go ahead and just copy the formats over to the cells here as far out as I selected with the autofill handle. You can fill it in without formatting or fill in the months, which is what we did in the first place here. In any case, you get some additional options. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel, get notified of the latest videos, and for only $2 a month, you can have access to all my Microsoft Office training videos.